My name is Aniyia Williams, and I am a principal on the Responsible Technology team at Omidyar Network. My work is focused on building equitable and inclusive and alternative tech ecosystems, and so it brings me great pleasure to be on stage with this wonderful panel today who all have their own unique perspectives to share about that topic. So we're gonna kick off with brief introductions from all three. Let's start at the end with Harold and work our way in with Astrid.
Perfect. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Harold Hughes. I'm a tech founder, an angel investor, and community builder. Being of Jamaican heritage, my background, we're very we're really community oriented, and so I love to bring people together and connect them to resources and other people. I'm currently living in Charlotte, North Carolina with my family, and I'm excited to be here.
Hi, I'm Kelley. I've spent my career doing large-scale developments in aerospace. Spent many years at Boeing, and about 6 years ago left to found a startup called Radia. And Radia is designing a huge airplane that is solving a massive logistics problem that's gonna radically expand the scope and scale of onshore wind energy.
Hi everyone, I'm Astrid Scholz, a little bit under the weather, and my German accent is more pronounced as a result. First generation immigrant here. I've recently come out as a polypreneur. I have multiple things keeping me busy, including a tech for good company, Amalaria, that builds enterprise and deep tech for mobilizing data and capital for entrepreneurs that are trying to solve wicked problems in the world. Aniyia and I are also co-founders of a global movement called Zebras Unite, that is for and by entrepreneurs who are building the businesses that are better for the world. I recently got tired of how hard that work is and ended up co-founding a company called Game the System, bringing the power of play to solving problems with broken and stupid systems. Just got back from London, where we launched hackingwealth.xyz to help redirect the 30 trillion in private wealth that are changing hands into entrepreneur ecosystems like you all are building here in Birmingham.
Wonderful. So now that we've gotten a chance to hear a little bit about each of you, let's talk about the intersections of your work and making the world a quote-unquote better place. So I know even the starting point of making the world a better place or tech for good can be a little bit of a trap when we're talking about it in broad strokes. So, I mean, I think we know that virtually no one starts a company with, mustache twirling villain things in mind, that they're gonna be nefarious and try to ruin the world. So let's start by defining a little bit of what the promise of technology holds for a positive future in your mind. And Rachel, I'd love to start with you.
Yeah, so it's incredible the energy needs of the tech community. Recently, all of the major tech companies have updated their energy requirements based on the exponential growth in AI. And if you look at data centers alone, cumulatively, by the end of the decade, the energy needs there will be greater than the energy needs in India, our most populous country. And Radia is going to be part of the solution there, driving the source of that energy to come from a renewable place. And so it's not just about the good in the foreground, but it's the good in the infrastructure and the background and coming in to support the amazing ecosystem of tech growth.
Harold, get in there.
Well, I think one of the biggest things we have the opportunity to do is make sure that tech is getting all the way home. It's easy to see technology working in big hubs like Miami, New York City, and these big technology hubs. But when you think about how technology is being used, it needs to get all the way to everyone. One of the examples I talk about is if you're a plumber and you only affiliate and socialize with plumbers, you may realize that there are some problems that you all just accept are natural. But when you start to diversify your network and have bakers and have other people in your network, you'll find that they have solved this problem just in a different industry. And so as we're using technology, I think it's going to be important to make sure it gets to the last mile so that we're not just covering Birmingham, but also Hoover and going out and out and out. And so I think that's the biggest opportunity we have, is making sure the promise of technology is that everyone has access to it and therefore everyone's improving it for the next person.
I love it. Astrid?
Well, what they said, I think of tech for good as technology that makes life better for the 8 billion, not for the 8 billionaires. And
That's a bar.
and think that through at all different layers, right? So we believe that curiosity and creativity is equally distributed around the world, but the access to capital to see your vision come to fruition, for example, is radically uneven and inequitable. And so I think of Tech for Good also at that next deeper layer of how do you build the systems that enable capital and resources to flow to entrepreneurs everywhere so that you sort of create a virtuous cycle of encouraging more innovations for good.
I love that. So in there, I heard infrastructure, I heard access to the technologies, access to capital, systems. So those are definitely themes that come up a lot when we're talking about tech for good. I would even push and say that there's some pieces in there around how we think about policy, how we think about culture, and even how we think about incentives, moving from these sort of structures that are based more in what some people would call shareholder primacy, right? That we're gonna put profits and fiduciary duties to make the most money possible above any of the other implications of what could happen with this technology. So thinking about that in terms of a quadruple bottom line, not just the financial returns, but also what is this doing for our users? What is this doing for communities? What is this doing for the workers that are involved? Okay, so let's switch gears. Rachel, you're working at this company that's in the energy and decarbonization space. Can you share more about the vision for Radia and how we can use, how we can use technologies like this to allow humans to live on the planet sustainably?
You know what I love about Radia, and you actually mentioned this a moment ago, it's all about taking an existing technology and applying it somewhere else to radically impact that other industry. So we're simply taking what is a really well understood technology, an airplane that has been in existence for more than 100 years, and using it in an industry that desperately needs it to be able to grow the scale of renewable energy. And so when I think about how to innovate and what value we're bringing, I love that the basis is doing something really simple and applying it in a new way.
I love that. Okay, and so Harold, you're occupying a very different position in the industry, and you wear many hats, but I 100% see you as a change maker, as an ecosystem builder. Can you tell us a little bit more about what guides your work and what the future would look like if you're successful in having a major impact?
So yeah, I would take some of the ifs out of it. I think we're going to get this done, right?
Yes.
I think
right.
that the way this room looks is awesome. I think the intentional inclusion is awesome. We talked about this a little bit earlier. I've been to Birmingham a couple of times, and every time I come, it's bigger, it's better, there's more people, the excitement is wild. I just posted on LinkedIn, the people are long this city, long this state, and long this region. And so that is the thing I'm most excited about. There's the saying about, build where you are with what you have and do all those things. And so to me, the future really looks like everyone feeling like they have an opportunity to have access to that dream. I remember participating in a program with Google, and the guy was asking all of us what our moonshot ideas were. And when no hands went up, I had to explain to him, it's like, a lot of people are trying to figure out how to solve a problem that's in front of their face. The idea of getting to the moon can't even be conceived because we don't have the opportunity and resources equally distributed. And so to me, getting that done is everyone in this room, everyone in these surrounding areas feeling like they have a chance at that dream and can come up with moonshots that can impact the 8 billion, as Astrid perfectly put.
Ooh, I love that. I love that so much. I think this is actually a really great segue to my question for Astrid, which, as you kind of mentioned, I've been very fortunate to know Astrid for a very long time. We're like work baby mamas in a way of an organization we created in 2017. But it's been a journey, and I've had this privilege of seeing this evolution and sharpening of your work, and I know that a lot of what is embedded in that now is infrastructure. So I would really love to hear you explain a little bit to the audience about what infrastructure means to you when we're talking about tech, and what parts you believe are most necessary to build right now.
Wow. Well, I'm glad y'all going to stick around for the next 3 days, because that's a big question. So infrastructure to me means sort of the deeper plumbing of how capital and ideas flow around the world and around places like the US. where it's not just about having access to the technology and the ability to write software and create a new app, but also have which is sort of the application layer, but also go deeper at the protocol layer and think about, and that's part of your work, right? Like who benefits and how is information used that all of us have contributed to this thing called the World Wide Web and is now being harvested and mined by a very small handful of companies that happen to have this billionaire-powered infrastructure, sitting on their server farms to make use of it. And so to me, if we want the tech we want requires an infrastructure that is more democratic than what's currently out there. And so that's part of what we're committed to building with others, and why it's so important to rethink and figure out reimagine really, how we direct capital into ecosystems like Birmingham, right? I sometimes call VC vanilla capital for obvious reasons, because it's inaccessible to so many of us. And I get double the venture, people like me get double the venture capital than black and brown folks do, which means white women get 2% of VC, right? And black folks get 1%. So you can't have the tech we want without building and reimagining sort of the capital, including the very plumbing by which capital flows, which in turn requires us to think about how investors make decisions, how they can even see the values and the ideas that are being innovated, not on the coast, but everywhere. And so all of that is potentially empowered and enabled by technology.
Yes, I've seen a lot of head nodding down there, Harold. I feel like, you want to get in here?
Well, I mean, I just think that when you think about how these solutions work, you normally hear people say that the opportunity is where the axe and shovels and picks are being sold. And so infrastructure is huge, but I think when a black founder walks into the room with the VC, even if that person's been an electrical engineer for the city that they live in, there's some lens, that bias that says, I don't know if this person can return multi-billion dollars. And so we do need to have more representation at the infrastructure level, as Astrid's saying, but I think some of that starts with the capital allocators, as well as finding other ways to fund these businesses. And so until then, you're likely going to see women, people of color, black founders building application layer solutions. As much as I would love for us to be able to capitalize on building the rails of the thing, there's so many challenges with the amounts of capital you need to build infrastructure that it becomes almost a non-starter in some of these infrastructure, in some of these industries.
Dang, I'm like, capital, capital, capital. Clearly a theme. And so I'm gonna because I'm looking at you, Rachel, and I feel like, because I'm like, I think that this capital question also does sort of favor the conversation around entrepreneurship and founders, which, as a serial entrepreneur myself, I know I have a bias here. But I definitely want to hear from you, Rachel, just in terms of, from a different perspective, working inside a company, especially one that's doing such a big, bold, ambitious play. From your perspective, where do you feel like tech is sometimes missing the mark?
Oh, that's a great question. I think that it's so tough. Well, it's tough to raise capital. I think tech sometimes misses the mark in thinking about capital in a really traditional way. It's the VCs, right? And that's it. Well, there's a lot of other ways to raise capital, and those can include strategic partnerships with downstream users that also benefit from the value of whatever product you're bringing. That can bring capital early in, and they can do that through equity, or they can do that in other ways, prepaid revenue or other deal structures. And so I think the important thing is, yes, it's hard. Yes, VCs can be hard and biased, but we as a community have to be really creative about how we're going to go build the capital stack to fund these ventures.
Yes, capital stack. We have to expand the capital stack. And I feel like you're opening up kind of where I was going to go next, which is, what are the real points of leverage that we have to ensure that innovation is truly happening in service of a positive vision of the future? So I think that one of these conversations definitely dwells around how do we have more capital options, right? And I'm not sure how many folks are VCs in the room, and hopefully we haven't hurt your feelings too bad so far, or are familiar with sort of the structure of venture capital. But without me getting into the 101 of it, I would say that in the tech industry, it has a very, very strong center of gravity. It's really purposed for what we might say is like, I don't know, optimistically 1% of businesses, and yet it's kind of the prevailing version of capital that's out there, and it thereby kind of produces a very specific type of effect because it's meant to be for huge scalable solutions and billions of dollars exits, and it kind of leaves a lot open for opportunities like Astrid and Rachel and Harold are talking here about companies that, you know, maybe are going to be a $50 million business. Like, venture capital is not for those companies, and yet I'm sure many of us in here can agree that a $50 million tech company could actually be quite profound and very special and do really amazing things in the ecosystem. And so there's these holes that I think structurally, and especially as we talk about infrastructure, play a role in sort of perpetuating how we get really big scaled tech solutions that have knock-on effects that are not good for society. And it's not that they start there, but that the capital that they have to be beholden to drives a certain set of decisions that they have to make. So hopefully that is making sense to people. So I kind of want to kick it back to you, Harold, on where are these other like points of leverage that we can be thinking about?
In the industry, in the ecosystem overall, or just specifically for funding?
Yeah, I mean, I'm thinking like, let's look at like if there's like a big, juicy, positive future that tech is playing a role in, like where are these kind of sort of levers that we might want to try to pull to get there?
Well, I've been really excited about some of the different municipalities, cities, states who are putting programming around funding technology. I know Birmingham's doing a lot of great stuff here. Even being from Greenville, South Carolina, we're seeing the state of South Carolina has their economic development wing investing in startups, specifically using technology. I just finished up a stint at the University of Texas as an entrepreneur in residence, and they want to make sure that we're taking that tech transfer office and connecting those entrepreneurs, normally PhDs and faculty, with seasoned entrepreneurs that understand the process of fundraising. And so what you're doing there is doing a better blend of merging industry with actual business acumen who are able to unlock it, because nothing's worse than having an amazing idea and great IP and great technology, but not having the idea, or excuse me, not having the resources or understanding on how is this a fundable business? How is this a sustainable business that's going to create jobs and so on? And so I think that that's been really exciting to see a lot more companies on the venture capital side, as well as investors, being intentional about allocating capital to operators who have experience with entrepreneurship, with really great IP, and seeing that technology truly flourish sooner and faster in every one of these ecosystems.
Yes. Astrid, points of leverage.
It's always about relationships, isn't it? And I'm, like Harold, really encouraged by some of the state level and municipal level initiatives where people are getting together and they're sort of deliberately building ecosystems that are hinging on relationships and are taking out the friction and the obstacles for entrepreneurs. So in my home state of Oregon, which is I think similar in size to your great state, you know, where the governor has now impaneled a climate tech task force. And sort of underneath all of that, there are a bunch of different layers of public-private partnerships where we're thinking about how we can make it easy for entrepreneurs to literally see the different sources of capital, be they VC funds, be they bank programs, be they technical assistance programs, and ideally just step through one door to get navigated to the right source of capital or support for them. And here you have a state like Oregon that has a great seaport, you know, sort of leveraging some of its historical industries, right? And so sort of saying we are good about traded sectors, we're also great about sneakers, by the way, right? And outdoor apparel, yada yada. And sort of like leveraging the heritage, but also then sort of leaning into the future and being trying to be deliberate about how we're removing obstacles for entrepreneurs. That I see the biggest potential in.
I love that, removing obstacles for entrepreneurs. You guys, I have these questions here that I'm not gonna have time to ask about policy and regulation and time to go to market, but we're just gonna we're gonna go to a closing question and you'll just have to find us and bring us back next year to hear the rest of that conversation. Because Harold, you said this thing that there are many different ways to play in the entrepreneurial ecosystem. And for me, as someone who does a lot of coalition and community building there, it resonates very deeply. I think it would be great for us to close with a response from everyone by asking each of you, what can people do right now to take the next step? I'm gonna start with Rachel.
That's a great question. When I think about this concept of like, what can we do? It's oftentimes so simple. It's like, what is a thing right in front of you? Whether it's big or small, what problem are you seeing in your community, in your ecosystem of entrepreneurs, or whatever ecosystem you're in? What is that thing that you can do? And it's often right in front of your face, and it's very simple, and it's just answering that call. It's stepping into whatever is that hard, bold next step that requires you to step forward and be courageous. And I think for me, life is all about that. Just take that next step, be bold, and lean into whatever challenge is right in front of you.
Yeah.
Yes.
For me, let's see if I can get a little crowd vantage point. For me, it's been really straightforward. Show of hands real quick. How many people in here are entrepreneurs? Okay, great.
Hey.
Awesome. How many of you are not entrepreneurs, but can make decisions at your company about where you spend your budget? Okay, great. Entrepreneurs, please look at all these hands. Right? So when I think about that, the important piece of this is, and I get it, it's the Shark Tankification of the world where everyone thinks they've got to make a multi-million or multi-billion-dollar idea, but you do not have to be an entrepreneur to make an impact in the entrepreneur ecosystem. We need early customers, and to be an early customer, you've got to have a little extra money. And you know who has extra money? People who have good, stable jobs with healthcare, right? And so when I think about this, it's really, really important. I encourage more of you, buy that product from that company directly from their website instead of Amazon. Give them feedback on how it works so that they can make it better without shaming them online. If you're an early stage investor, don't ask companies about their moat, right? That sounds ridiculous. And so thinking through all of the different ways you can participate in the entrepreneur ecosystem is huge. You do not have to start a company to be influential in that journey, and I encourage more people to find ways to support people and companies in their own ecosystem and in their own way.
Dang. That was the mic drop. But like, Astrid, you want to please get
How
in
do I
here with
follow
your
that?
thoughts.
Throw a dinner party. Bring together a bunch of people from the different parts who are all touching different parts of the ecosystem. So bring your banker and your VC and a bunch of entrepreneurs and put them all in a room together and sort of see if you can get your arms around your local ecosystem right here in Birmingham and figure out where the gaps are, right? Like, do you actually, like, who's writing checks of what sizes? Do you have the right kinds of funders in existence? Like, I mean, you know, for example, in Portland, we're finding there's not enough, not enough funds that'll fund at the $250,000 to $2 million stage, right? And that can be really illuminating, because then you can turn around to your regional economic development agencies and say, that's actually what we need help with, right? Or that's where we might be able to leverage a federal program. So do that sort of local ecosystem mapping, but please do it over dinner. It's more fun.
Yes, break bread together. Awesome. All right, well, that's time. I hope you've enjoyed our panel, and come find us if you have more questions, if you want to kind of hear about those policy questions I was going to ask. And we'll check out you guys later.